beautiful people, my name is Jackie and this is going to be the start of my Lisbon travel vlog. This is the third in my Portuguese travel vlogs series, so go check out the other vlogs to see my other adventures in Portugal. This is going to be my vlog of Lisbon, and when we arrived in Lisbon the first day, we really just got acclimated to our new surroundings. We got there in the afternoon. That night for dinner, we went to this amazing tapas place by our hotel. It was called Tapas del Bucho. I had to get a porn star martini, of course. If you saw my Porto vlog, you know that they're my favorite European cocktail. And all of the food that we had at this tapas restaurant was delicious. People were lining up outside the door before they opened, so that's how you know it was a good place. I think my favorite thing was the ceviche, which was really fresh and yummy, but I also loved the cod tempura because that tempura batter was so delightfully light. This was a great find by me, if I do say so myself. Recommended. The next day we started our sightseeing at the Carmo Convent and we met a four-legged friend. I am a cat lover, and this cat hanging out outside the convent before it opened, he was a little celebrity, or she, I'm not sure the cat's gender, and everybody just wanted to come pet this kitty. One of the people who I was on vacation with, she talked to one of the employees at the convent, and the employee said that the cat basically is their boss. He shows up to be fed every day and gets lots of pets, though she didn't ask what the cat's name was, which I would have liked to know because as a cat lover, I always want to hear the names of my feline friends. But let's move on from this gorgeous kitty and actually get to the attraction itself. So let's talk a little bit about Carmo Convent. Its full name in English is the Convent of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. It was founded in 1389 by the Constable of Portugal. The convent was active for centuries, though it was negatively impacted by several earthquakes, and the roof was completely destroyed in an earthquake, I believe the 1755 Lisbon earthquake, though I could be wrong about that, and it was never rebuilt. Today, it also houses an archaeological museum. There are also several notable burials in the Carmo Convent. This includes the illegitimate son of King Denis of Portugal. It houses the tomb of Princess Catarina of Portugal. She was one of the daughters of King Edward, or Duarte, I believe, is the Portuguese version of Edward, and his wife Eleanor of Aragon. When she was younger, Catarina was supposed to marry the King of Navarre, but he died before the marriage could take place, and she ended up becoming a nun. It also houses the tomb of King Ferdinand I of Portugal, and inside the archaeological museum you can find many artifacts from many different time periods. This includes relics from the tribes who lived in Portugal before it became the country of Portugal, and it even had some Egyptian mummies. Another thing about Carmo Convent was that it played a role in the Carnation Revolution. The Carnation Revolution took place on the 25th of April, 1974, and it overthrew the dictatorship, establishing a Republican government in Portugal. Apparently, shortly before we arrived in Lisbon, they had just been having celebrations for the 50th anniversary of the revolution. So from my understanding, from the 1930s-ish to the late 1960s, Portugal was under the dictatorship of a man named Antonio de Oliveira Salazar. After Salazar's death, he was replaced by another dictator whose name was Marcelo Caetano, and the Carnation Revolution overthrew him. So, while he was in the building next door, the people swarmed around the convent and the building where Caetano was, and he sat in the same chair in his office for, I think, like 12 plus hours, they said, until eventually he surrendered to the people and they were able to establish their republic. Caetano actually was not thrown in prison, he was not executed, he was simply exiled to Brazil to spend the rest of his life there. But so there is a building next door where his office used to be, and there's a museum in there that tells you about the revolution. We went in, I didn't film anything in there, and to be honest, as someone who doesn't know a lot about Portuguese history, I found the displays in the museum very hard to follow. They were not necessarily in chronological order, so as someone who doesn't know that much about the history of Portugal, it was very hard for me to follow the sequence of events, but that's neither here nor there. After that, we headed over to Bertrand Bookstore and Cafe. Established in the 1700s, this is the oldest operating bookstore in the entire world. It was even certified by Guinness World Records. As a bibliophile, I could not resist the opportunity to check this place out. They do have English language titles, though most of their selection is in Portuguese. And I didn't buy anything because I could not fit another book in my suitcase, so I had to be good. But if you do choose to buy a book here, they will actually ask you at checkout if you want a stamp showing that it was bought at the oldest bookstore in the world, which is pretty neat if you want a cool book to take home with you from your trip to Lisbon. They also have a small cafe in the back of the bookstore, so you could maybe go grab a coffee or something to enjoy with your book. I saw this Portuguese Agatha Christie and was really tickled by it. After a quick stop for some gluten-free gelato, my mom has celiac disease, so this was a big treat for her. We then headed to the Arco do Rua Augusta, which is at the end of Rua Augusta, a pedestrian-only street with lots of shopping, and the Praco do Comercio. As I said in my other videos, I apologize if I am butchering the Portuguese. I don't know the language, and I'm just trying my best. But according to my mother, the Praco do Comercio is the largest square in all of Europe. So we went to check that out. It was a beautiful blue sky day. After that, we went to Lisbon Cathedral. The cathedral's full name is the Cathedral of St. Mary Major, though it's frequently called Lisbon Cathedral or simply the Sé. It was first built in 1147, though due to the many earthquakes the cathedral has survived, it's been modified and renovated several times, making it a mix of several different architectural styles. I enjoyed visiting Lisbon Cathedral. The cloisters were closed, so we were not able to go look at those. I also wished that there was some more signage or more information on what we were looking at, because there really was not a lot of historical context. There were several tombs inside the cathedral, though none of them were labeled. According to Wikipedia, they are the tombs of a knight named Lopo Fernandes Pacheco, 7th Lord of Ferreira de Aves, as well as his wife, Maria de Villalobos, who is pictured on her tomb reading a book of hours. And there is another tomb that belongs to a royal princess. They are not exactly sure her name or whose daughter she was. They can just tell from the coat of arms on her tomb that she was a member of the Portuguese royal family. IDK, if this is weird, my family definitely thinks it's a little weird, but as somebody who loves history, I like seeing people's tombs or graves. I don't know if that's weird, but I like looking at them finding out who that person was and then being able to go on the internet, Google them, and learn about their lives. I don't know if that's weird, but it's something that I like doing as a lover of history. And so whenever I visit a historical church or other location, I want to learn about the people who lived there, the historical events related to it. And so I do wish there was some information for me to read to get more context to what I was looking at. But it was a really nice cathedral. I always love visiting cathedrals because they're just so beautiful, and it's so impressive, the architecture that people were able to achieve centuries ago with so little technology. You know what I mean? Really impressive that they were able to build structures like this one in the 12th century. After leaving Lisbon Cathedral, we wanted to go to the Castelo San Jorge, but the castle is way at the top of a hill, and we didn't know if our entire group had the strength to make that walk, so we booked a rickshaw. We went on a little rickshaw ride up the hill, and honestly, that was really fun. The woman who was driving us up there was very nice, and I'm glad that we took the rickshaw because it was a steep climb. The Moors originally built a fortification in this spot in the 10th century, but then in 1147, during the Christian Reconquista, Afonso Henriquez, who later became the first king of Portugal, captured the area and drove the Moors out because, well, you know the deal. All these Christian people in Iberia were like, ooh, we gotta drive out those Muslims and blah, blah, blah. You know the story. And Lisbon became the capital of the Kingdom of Portugal in the 1200s. The castle served as a fortified residence for the king. King Denis I renovated the castello around 1300, and in the 1370s, King Ferdinand ordered the building of the Circa Nova. Nowadays, however, not much of the castle is left. There are some battlements and things. There are, however, a lot of peacocks, including little baby peacocks who were just so cute. Look at those little babies. And they have little water out for them. Oh my god, I love animals, you guys. Like, look at those little babies drinking their water. Anyways, so there are a lot of peacocks up there and other birds. You can hear them calling to each other in the trees up there. They are all over the place. And there is also a small museum at the Castello where you can see some artifacts that were discovered by archaeologists digging around the area of the Castello. But that's about it for the Castelo San Jorge. I've heard it's very nice to go up there during sunset and see the view. After returning from Sintra, my mom and I went to Pink Street, which honestly was a massive disappointment. It's not that big and it's just filled with people drinking, so it was not my favorite. But then we went to a quieter area to have some sangrias in peace, which was nice. The next day, however, we went to the neighborhood of Belem and we went to Jeronimos Monastery. This was one of my favorite things on the entire trip. It was one of the things that when I was planning this vacation, I knew 100% I had to see Jeronimos Monastery. I will tell you, it is an extremely popular attraction. We got there right when it opened and we already had to wait in line. So definitely be prepared to wait. I think it's totally worth the wait. However, you can buy tickets ahead of time. However, you still have to wait in line because basically there are two lines. There's one line to buy tickets, and then there's the line that we waited in where basically I think they let in a set number of people at a time. so you still have to wait. You could buy a time ticket, but the time doesn't matter. So if you buy a ticket for 2 p.m. and show up at 2 p.m., you might be standing in line for 2 hours. I would just recommend getting there early or later, hopefully to beat the crowds. But what do I know? The Jeronimos Monastery was built in the 1500s near the launch point for Vasco da Gama's journey. It later became the necropolis for the Portuguese royal house of Aviz. Belem is a neighborhood in Lisbon, but it is far out from the tourist center. However, you can very easily get a train from the Lisbon waterfront to Belem, and it's a pretty easy ride. King Manuel I of Portugal petitioned the Holy See for permission to construct a monastery at this site in 1496. Construction of the monastery and its church began on January 6, 1501, and it took 100 years to complete. Manuel I selected the religious order of Jeronimite monks, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, I think it's Jeronimite, monks to occupy the monastery. Their role was to pray for the king's eternal soul and to provide spiritual assistance to navigators and sailors who were departing to discover lands around the world. The monks did this for over 4 centuries until 1833, when the religious orders were dissolved and the monastery was abandoned. Because Manuel I was the one who originally took it upon himself to order the building of this monastery, the monastery's architectural style later became known as Manueline. This place is absolutely beautiful, and there are so many little intricate details all over. I just didn't know where to look because there's so much carving and little touches all over the monastery. For all you fellow history buffs out there, I have a little bit of information on our friend Manuel I. Manuel I was originally not heir to the throne. That was actually his cousin, Prince Afonso. Afonso married Isabella of Aragon, the oldest daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, the Catholic monarchs. However, Afonso died, and thus Manuel was declared the heir to the Portuguese throne. About 5 or 6 years after Prince Afonso's death, Manuel married his widow, Isabella of Aragon. She gave birth to a son named Miguel. However, she died within an hour of his birth, and the young Miguel died as a 1-year-old in the arms of his grandmother. Thus, Manuel, once again, had no wife and no heir. So, who did he decide to marry? Well, the Spanish and the Portuguese were not gonna let a good marriage alliance go to waste. So Ferdinand and Isabella said, "Hey, Manuel, our daughter Maria is single," and thus Manuel ended up marrying Maria. The two of them are buried in the church next to the monastery, which we will see later. So that means that Isabella was married to one man and then married his cousin, and Manuel married Isabella and then Isabella's sister. I believe then his third marriage was to their niece? Cousin? Hold on, let me check that. Okay, Manuel I's third marriage was to Eleanor of Austria, who was the daughter of Philip of Austria, and his wife, Joanna of Castile, aka Joanna La Loca. So she was the niece of Isabella and Maria, Joanna being their sister. And that means that Manuel I was married to 2 sisters and their niece. Yeah, he really didn't know how to find a partner outside of that one family. Isabel, Joanna, and Maria did have another sister who you've definitely heard of if you're obsessed with Tudor history like me, Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of King Henry VIII. Come to think of it, she was also married to two different brothers, so Ferdinand and Isabella were just not the type to let a good marriage alliance go to waste, you know? One husband dies, they'll just find another. All jokes aside, the monastery is also home to the tombs of the Portuguese poet Fernando Pessoa, the poet and playwright Alameda Garrett, and the writer/historian Alexander Herculano. If you go to the church next door, you will find the tombs of Manuel I, his wife Maria of Aragon, and their descendants. Now, you actually have to leave the monastery and get back in line to go to the church, just letting you know, because that's not something that I was aware of. And if it is a Sunday, obviously they will be having Mass in there, so you will not be able to enter while Mass is going on. This tomb that you're seeing here belongs to Luis de Camões. Again, I'm sure I'm butchering that pronunciation, but he was a Portuguese poet, one of the greatest Portuguese poets, and he wrote an epic poem called the Lusíads, which I heard about when we visited the university in Coimbra. Apparently it is still to this day required reading in Portuguese schools. And Luis de Camões was very influential in the Age of Discovery. He wrote a lot of poems about the explorers. The church was designed by the Spanish architect Juan de Castillo, and here you are seeing some of the tombs for the Portuguese royal family. The ones here that have crowns on top and elephants on the bottom, those are the tombs of Manuel I, Maria of Aragon, their son King John III, and John's wife Catherine of Austria. All of the royals buried here have those crowns on top of their tombs and the elephants holding the tombs up. Here in this room you can also see paintings depicting the life of Saint Jerome, the namesake of Jeronimos Monastery. But to go back to the tombs, these tombs are for Manuel, Maria, and their descendants. Their son, John, like I said, married Catherine of Austria. However, he only had one son to survive infancy. That son died at 16, but 18 days later, his wife gave birth to a son, Sebastian, also buried in this church. King Sebastian disappeared during a battle and was presumed dead, though I believe his body was never found, so his tomb in this church actually doesn't have his body in it. King Sebastian became a sort of mythic, almost King Arthur-like figure. Many people swore that one day King Sebastian was going to come back and save his people when they needed him the most. After Sebastian's death, his uncle Henry became the king, but Henry was also a cardinal, and thus he had no children. So the succession resulted in King Philip of Spain briefly ruling Portugal as well. Here you're seeing the gorgeous tomb of the Portuguese explorer Vasco da Gama. This tomb is so beautifully sculpted. I mean, look at his hands. You can see all the little details of his hands. This is an expertly crafted tomb, truly amazing to look at. Vasco da Gama, of course, was an extremely famous Portuguese explorer. He was the first European to reach India by the sea. And after leaving the monastery and walking towards the river, you can see the Monument of Discoveries, which depicts Prince Henry the Navigator and many Portuguese explorers all looking off towards the skyline, ready to colonize the world. Yay! It is a really cool monument, though. It is absolutely huge. I didn't expect the people to be so big. After that, we walked down to Belem Tower. We did not go in because the line was extremely long, and based on what I read online, there's really not that much to see inside, so we just admired it from afar. That is pretty much it for our trip. I did see some duck friends in the park in Belem, including an adorable little baby duck, so some cute animal videos to finish everything off here. But that is it for my Lisbon travel vlog. I hope you enjoyed watching. I had so much fun making this vlog for you. If you liked this video, please do give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to see more from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a truly exceptional rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you next time.